Welcome, brave souls, to a chilling journey into the depths of terror. Brace yourselves as we delve into a spine-tingling tale that will send shivers down your spine. But fear not, for you're not alone on this journey. Join us, subscribe, and hit that like button to support our channel as we uncover the darkness that lies ahead. Let the haunting begin.
Story 1. This terrifying story happened to me in the 1990s. At the time, I was working at a newspaper that reported on all things unusual. Half of these stories were of course fabrications, but some of them were based on real events. Our editor had an intuition for mystical stories. I don't know where he found them, but if he sent me on an assignment, it was always worth it. It happened in early fall. That day, the editor called me into his office and showed me a clipping from a small local newspaper. It said that in a small town in the Appalachian Mountains, little children had started disappearing. A total of 5 children had vanished over the course of 2 months. The children would disappear from their yards when the adults weren't around. No one had seen anything. A couple of times, people thought they had seen a wolf and wolf tracks. That was all the information provided. The editor proposed that I go, since I had the most level-headed view on events. The next day, I set off on my journey. I had to take the train, and at the station a driver was waiting to take me to the town. When I arrived, I started looking for a hotel. But there was none. A local family agreed to take me in, a husband, wife, and their 2 children, ages 5 and 7. The children seemed standoffish and eyed me warily, like little wolves. In contrast, the parents were very welcoming. I was put up in a tiny room with just a bed and nightstand. After wishing the hosts good night, I went to sleep. I fell asleep almost immediately, worn out from the travel. That night, I dreamed of wolves, big ones, with human eyes. I spent the whole night running away from them in my sleep. In the morning, I woke up exhausted and with a headache. After washing up and having breakfast, I went to see the local sheriff. When he learned why I was there, he was reluctant to give me information. But a small monetary motivation, and soon I had the addresses of the families where the children had disappeared. I went to the first address, since the town was small and it wasn't far to walk. I introduced myself to the parents of the missing 5-year-old girl as an investigator from the county seat. They showed me the spot in their backyard where they last saw their daughter. The whole area was thoroughly trampled. Examining the grass closely, I saw several tracks that looked like dog prints. The strange thing was that there were tracks of 3 animals, 1 large and 2 smaller. The same pattern was at each of the other locations, tracks of 3 animals. After visiting all the addresses, I returned to my temporary home and sat down to record everything I had seen. Those tracks were really bothering me. I decided to ask my hosts about a dog and her puppies. Maybe they knew something. The woman flinched at my question and averted her eyes. Her husband said there were lots of dogs with puppies around, and those animal tracks were probably in every yard, not just where the children disappeared. After working on my notes for a while, I went to bed. In the night, I was awoken by howling and some whimpering. Looking out the window, I saw a wolf and 2 wolf pups by the family's shed, gnawing on something. I decided to wake the host, but neither he, his wife, nor the children were in their rooms. Maybe they had gone to stay with someone else for the night. The wolves kept me from falling back asleep, and I sat watching them out the window. Closer to dawn, I realized something was off. The animals started behaving strangely and shifting before my eyes. Pressed up against the glass, I watched as the wolf and pups transformed into the man and 2 children. After about 5 minutes, I understood that it was the homeowner and his kids. I was drenched in cold sweat. I pulled back from the window so they wouldn't see me. I watched as the woman joined them from the direction of the woods. All of them were naked. Once they had gone inside and settled down, I stealthily made my way to the spot where the werewolves had been. There was a pile of rags there. Rummaging through them, I found the remains of children. With trembling hands, I quietly returned to the house, gathered my things, and slipped out. I went straight to the sheriff and told him about my grisly discovery, omitting the part about the werewolves. The parents were arrested on suspicion of murder and cannibalism. I took the first transport out of there, back to the train station. Later, the story ended up in the newspaper. But there was no mention of werewolves, just about the deranged parents who had been eating and feeding their own children to other children. Story 2. The real-life monster who terrorized American towns for years. In the late 16th century, a horrific creature emerged in the small town of Bedburg, Pennsylvania that began attacking and killing the local livestock. Before long, the mutilated bodies of women and children were also being discovered around the town, sending the villagers into a state of panic and terror. The people of Bedburg were convinced they were facing a demonic entity from hell. In reality, the town was harboring a savage werewolf in their midst, Peter Stump, a wealthy local farmer who led a sinister double life. To the public, Stump was known as a respectable family man and pillar of the community. But behind closed doors, he transformed into a bloodthirsty monster. For years, Stump terrorized not just Bedburg, but neighboring towns as well, engaging in a horrific killing spree. First, local farmers were mystified by the strange deaths of their cattle, finding the animals savagely torn apart as if by a wild animal. Suspecting wolves, the farmers armed themselves and began hunting the creatures. Little did they know the real culprit was one of their own. Soon, children started vanishing from farms and homes. Young women began disappearing on the roads. Some were found brutally murdered, while others were never seen again. The town descended into panic and fear. Whispers spread that a werewolf was to blame, a human with the ability to shape-shift into a wolf to satisfy its bloodlust. And the horrifying truth was that Stump himself claimed to possess this supernatural power. He confessed that when he wore a special belt made of wolf skin, his body would transform, granting him incredible strength and ferocity. In reality, Stump was simply a deranged serial killer. Over the course of his twisted life, he was responsible for the murders of 13 children, several pregnant women, and countless livestock. He would sexually assault his female victims before tearing them apart. Stump even admitted to cannibalizing the unborn fetuses of pregnant women, describing them as delicate morsels. The younger children were often strangled or bludgeoned to death, their skulls cracked open. Stump would then consume their raw flesh. His horrific crimes culminated in a triple murder, where he lured 2 men and a woman outside the town walls, killing the men by bashing their skulls and then raping and devouring the woman. Eventually, Stump's reign of terror came to an end when hunters tracked him down and captured him, finding him still clutching the cursed wolfskin belt that he believed gave him his inhuman powers. Stump was put on trial and executed for his unspeakable crimes, which had plunged the entire region into a waking nightmare. Story 3. This story took place in the American South. It all started when children and women began disappearing in a small village, their bodies later found torn to shreds. No one knew who the culprit was. But one day, a young farm woman heading to the hayfields was attacked by a wolf near the village. Keeping her wits about her, the girl immediately struck the beast with a rake. The animal leapt back and disappeared into the trees. But that wasn't the end of it. More attacks followed, most ending less fortunately. While some men managed to fend off the beast with clubs, pitchforks, and whatever else they could grab, women and children fell into the monster's jaws almost instantly, as it had a habit of attacking suddenly, lying in wait for victims even near the village itself. The farmers tried everything to catch the wolf, but it seemed bewitched. The devil's own luck was on that wolf's side. It cleverly avoided pits, traps, and snares, gnawing through nets, and appearing to vanish during major hunts. Little wonder, as the predator was in fact a young, strong werewolf living in a nearby village. Its identity was uncovered entirely by chance. One day, the farmers of the village, plagued most by attacks, called a council, begging help catching the wolf from all the neighboring settlements. No one refused to join the hunt, all dreamed of ending the bloody atrocities. Finally, a hunt was organized. They decided to encircle the high danger zone, with small posses gradually closing in toward the center. Said and done, the farmers divided into small groups and began the hunt. To flush the wolf from its lair, the men made as much noise as possible, hoping to attract the predator's attention. Their plan worked. Drawn by the cries and commotion, the werewolf burst onto the trail right in front of one posse. The farmers faltered, backing away, while the wolf seemed utterly calm, staring at the men frozen in surprise, as if deciding who to start its bloody rampage on. Luckily, one exceptionally strong, quick, and agile man was in that group. Leaping onto the beast first, he managed to plunge a large knife into its side. Mustering all its strength, the wolf howled, threw off the brave farmer, and fled into the bushes. Seconds later, the whole posse gave chase, but despite the deep, serious wound, the predator ran far faster and was soon lost from sight. The men didn't give up, hoping to track it by the clear blood trail on the ground and grass. Soon they joined up with another group, all following the trail that eventually led them to a small clearing. But they were shocked to find, instead of the expected beast, a young, handsome man from a nearby village lying on the grass, breathing heavily, blood pouring from his wound. Realizing who they faced, the farmers wasted no ceremony on the source of their misery, for this monster's fangs had claimed over 30 lives. The enraged people stood stunned for minutes before transforming into wild animals themselves. Descending on the dying man, they gouged out his eyes, then ripped him to shreds.